One of the most popular yet underrated R6 channels has to be Poxonlox. And why wouldn't he be? He has the skills, the knowledge, the charisma, and the skilled editors. Speaking of which, why not use the opportunity to talk about what it's actually like to edit one of his videos? By one of his videos, I mean 1 champion versus 9 coppers.
Subscribe if you like my editing.
Now, obviously, before starting anything, we have to come up with a plan. We have to set up some ground rules. What kind of video editing do we want? What kind of pacing do we want? The call to action, the script, everything. This includes setting up a brand new Google Drive file, a brand new Google Docs file. We're going to be keeping track of all the footage, all the notes, all the scripts, and everything in between. Once that is taken care of, we can start with some test runs, making sure the audio and the video format and basically everything is up to date and we won't encounter any bugs in the future. And fair credit, we didn't encounter any corrupted footage or anything like that. The problem was obtaining the footage because Pox has really good download speed. Upload speed, however, is another story. So it genuinely took an entire day just to get all of his footage. Remember I said that I was editing a video called 1 champion versus 9 coppers? Well, that 1 champion's footage was clean, ready to go, no bugs, no issues at all. However, the 9 champions is a different story. They ended up sending an uncompatible format that Premiere did not recognize. So for the first couple of hours, I was just converting all the footage to MP4 and making it so Premiere can properly recognize all the different POVs which I had to work with. Once that was done, the next step was to align all the footage. By the way, it wasn't just the 10 POVs. There was also a third-person POV which I also had to include every now and then. Each of them were 45 minutes long, and we're not even talking about me cropping and getting ready to set up the roots. By the way, if you don't know what the roots means, it's essentially cutting, cropping, and polishing everything up before adding the subtitles, effects, and basically everything else on top. So 45 minutes turned into 11 and a half minutes. Those 11 and a half minutes had to be exported, sent to the drive, and checked by Pox himself. Obviously, he added some notes here and there saying what he wanted to be included, what he didn't want to be included, and once all those notes were sent, received, and adjusted, the roots of the video were ready. Now, I did have to go back and forth with Pox multiple times for this, but the entire video ended up being just a little over 14 minutes long. Is the process long and tedious for me? Yes, but does this ensure that the client is happy and that the video is the highest quality as it can be? Yeah. Is it worth it? Depends on the price. So now that the roots are actually done, we can move on to subtitles, we can move on to sound effects, we can move on to motion effects, zooms, transitions. Did I mention keyframe animation? I'm doing that as well. Oh, by the way, I was doing all this on 2 monitors. So if at any point you can't see what's going on the second monitor, or you think everything is kind of frozen in place or barely moving, yeah, it's because I'm doing most of the stuff on the second monitor and then moving the results to the first one. And let me tell you, instead of taking 2 hours to work on the transitions alone, it took me maybe a little under 1 hour. But let's be honest, transitions were probably the easiest part of the video. The hardest part was probably the motion effects, aka the zooms, the bleeps, the transitions, the keyframe animation, basically all of that I like to categorize as motion effects, and I got all of it done in a little under 4 hours. Sound effects did take me a little over an hour, and before you say why it took me over an hour, Pox gave me his Artlist subscription because he wanted specific and quote-unquote fresh and new sound effects for me to use. That was the only reason it took so long, because keep in mind, everything that I do, I have to go back and forth with him to make sure he's happy. So then I won't have to get back into Premiere and do 20 things all over again. I've already done it, I've marked it, and it's just to avoid all that headache. Every sound effect that is being used has to be sent and okayed by him, which is why it took over an hour. By the way, everything that I'm talking about so far was tedious, sure, but it wasn't difficult or annoying. Everything except the subtitles. Mainly because I didn't know who these people were. I didn't know how many POVs there were. I don't know what colors to use for color coding. So I had to go back and forth with Pox about this all the time. Generating the subtitles was fairly easy. Premiere has a bunch of tools for that. But you know how I like to do everything frame by frame. So if there's a cut, the subtitle cuts on that same frame. And I'll go through the entire video and line every single cut up perfectly to make sure the video is flawless. Then I had to make sure there were no spelling mistakes, send the subtitles to Pox, make sure he didn't find any spelling mistakes, add some animations, change the font. Overall, it took way longer than it should have. I love how I'm looking back in all this and making it sound like it was no big deal. In reality, it was basically a week of just non-stop editing, Premiere errors, crashes, and chaos, essentially. And even when everything was done, Pox would still send me some notes telling me that he didn't like this or that he wanted to change that, and I had to go back, reroute everything, which was a tedious and annoying process, but I think overall the video turned out pretty well. By the way, shout out to Pox for giving me access to his YouTube channel, sending me a bunch of material that included the subtitle font, the assets. It definitely didn't feel like I was the only one doing the job. There was definitely a lot of commitment from his side, and just like that, 1 champion versus 9 coppers was done in under a week. But what did Pox really think about the video?
Well, I guess the million-dollar question I have is, what did you think overall of the video?
The highest quality video I've ever uploaded to my channel. The amount of effort you put in, dude, the amount of checks you've done in with me, the communication, everything has been a 5-star experience.
Looking back at the video, I like to believe that that was the easiest video we've ever done. And we've done a bunch of other videos after that, and I'm gonna roll some clips right now showing you just how large some of the other files are in comparison to that first video. Nonetheless, the channel has gained tens of thousands of subscribers, and I am yet to see him unhappy with any of the product.